Yes, what's good, people? Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever are you listening around the world. 12th man is back. We've got another Guna to Guna show, and this time it's myself and, of course, Rory from Rory Talks Football. Big up to you, bro. How are you, man? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. No, I'm good. Do you know what? We've had this little break from Arsenal, and yeah, it's been nice.
It has been, man. I can't lie. Look, I'm one of those people who would rather be in the FA Cup, as I'm sure you are. But when you've got a
Yeah.
break, you might as well take it. But it's a lot colder where I am to where our boys are right now, man. Over in Dubai. Let me start there. Before we go into that, make sure you do me a favor, people. Hit the like button. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you're following Rory as well. I'll put his link in the title if it hasn't been done by Sam already. He had to set this up today because I've been busy this morning. So make sure that you go follow Rory. You're probably all following him on TikTok. And if you're not, he has got YouTube as well. So please make sure you go follow and show him some love. Thoughts on the team going to Dubai? There's been a mix and a big mix, to be fair. Some, I think, are frustrated, not because they've gone to Dubai, because we're out of the cup and it means we've got our chance to go and get some warm weather training, as they call it. Some are just like, no, send them to Jaywick Sands and Hackney Marshes. I've had enough of them. And some are like, look, let them do what they want. It might be good for them. They might come back like they did last year. What's your honest thoughts, bro?
Yeah, I mean, it's annoying that we're out of the FA Cup, especially now you're looking at it and it's like Chelsea are out and Liverpool are out, and there was probably an opportunity there, and the way that we went out to United was ridiculous. But once you've made that mistake of being out of the FA Cup, I don't feel like it's worth not using this opportunity to try and make the rest of the season better. And like if we'd not come top 8 in the Champions League, then we wouldn't have been able to do this either. So it's not just that okay, we got knocked out of the FA Cup, so we're going. It's we got knocked out of the FA Cup and we don't have to play in the Champions League playoffs, which has given us that gap. So there was kind of one good reason and one bad reason. But yeah, I just feel like we know the players needed a break. We know that that break worked well last season, so why not do it? I just feel like punishing them almost, or not even punishing them, but staying here to do training when you could go and do something that benefits the team. Like you may as well.
Yeah, look, I believe the Dubai situation last season was probably just what the team needed. Whereas I'm not sure that I can agree with it as much this time. And the reasons for that is I feel like it's been so frustrating watching Arsenal this season more than ever. And I've got to a stage now, Rory, right, where I I can't stand anyone who is okay with going out of cup competitions. And I know you and I are quite different in the Carabao Cup, but I'm sure you're not like that with the FA Cup, right? That's an unbelievable cup that's got unbelievable
Yeah,
history.
no, yeah,
So I
yeah, no,
feel
hundred
like
percent.
when we're going out of those domestic cups and everyone's then trying to play and we're sunning it up in Dubai, it leaves a real sour taste in my mouth. It really does, bro. And I know it's not about rewarding players. These players are millionaires. They get rewarded every day, right? It's not so much about that. But I do think there's a sense of this rewarding failure thing, which is like, oh, we've gone out. Oh, do you know what? At least we can go and have a holiday now. And that don't sit right with me. So I can understand kind of both sides. I see someone like, look, let them do what they want, Dan. Let them crack on. But do you know what? I dare Arteta and Arsenal to lose against Leicester or West Ham after this. I dare, because it is not a good look, man. If you drop points now, going and summing it up and having fun, and oh my God, look at all this and all the PR that comes with it, and look at these players that are going to be back soon, all these fresh faces, we're getting warm weather training, it looks so delightful, and then they go and pull out an absolute stinker against Leicester and West Ham. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, no, you have to come back from this trip. You have to look fresh. You have to look up for it, and you have to get the results. Like if you don't, then yeah, it's a problem. I'd say the only thing on the rewarding failure, if we'd looked, because against United we were poor and our finishing was poor, but I didn't feel like in that game we weren't trying. Like it didn't give that game didn't give me the impression that the players were thinking, oh, well, if we lose this, maybe I could get a nice little holiday to Dubai. Like I felt like the players tried in that game. It was just some fucking absolutely shambolic finishing that cost us. So yeah, it's I see the point, and I like it looks bad. Um, but like you said, it's now on the players to come back from that trip and for that trip to have been worth it.
Yeah, 100%, man. Let's talk about the two competitions in kind of isolation. We might as well talk about the Newcastle one very quickly. Um, the damage was done in the first leg, don't get me wrong. But I was really disappointed with the second leg as well, Rory, because I actually thought, you know what? I don't expect us to go through. I thought we were actually going to win the game. right? I didn't think we were going to go through the tie, but I thought we would have probably lost on aggregate. But we got battered and bullied again. And I think what was more frustrating for me was not the fact that the manner that we went out. That was actually our best team apart from Saka. What did you make of it, bro?
Yeah, similar to you. Going into it, I think that the City result had given me like a little bit more confidence going into it, and Newcastle had started stuttering a bit. So I did feel like there was an opportunity there to make that comeback. But the frustration was just that it's like the same result against Newcastle, the same performance against Newcastle. It's one team that it feels like we're not learning from and we're not getting better against. And we play them again later in the season. And, I think they've won 4 of the last 5 games against us. And that's frustrating. Like, if we'd won 1-0 and gone out 2-1 on aggregate, I'd have been like, you know what? We cost ourselves in the first leg. It is what it is. But yeah, to go there again, make the same mistakes is frustrating. And I think Arteta has to figure out how to deal with Newcastle and Eddie Howe.
Yeah, it's a mad one. He seems to have his number. And what really annoyed me was we kind of got battered and bullied in every department. And players that, I'm not going to lie to you, Rory, I really like in this Arsenal side were really letting us down. I thought Saliba got cooked. I thought Gabriel got spun. I thought Declan Rice was embarrassing, if I'm honest. He's one of my favourite players. Raya, like, what are you doing, bro? Like, what are you doing there? Did you watch Ortega last week and try to copy him? Like, it was that bad, bruv. And, like, then up top, I wanted to segue into this. I think we've got one of the worst attacks in the league, bruv. And I know the stats might not say that, and it might say that we score goals and that we share the goals around. But when it matters, I don't think I can put my house on any of those front three to put it back, ball in the back of the net, bro. And I include Odegaard in that as well. And look, I'm a fan of Odegaard. I know me and Lee Gunner and other people have had arguments about this and disagreements about this. I love Odegaard. I think he's quality, right? But when it comes to him in front of goal, he's another one I put into that bracket. And Gary Neville made a really good point in the commentary. And I don't particularly like Gary Neville, but he did make a good point. And he said, this front four, none of them can strike a football. It's hard for me to disagree with that, Rory.
Yeah, no, it's true. It is especially without Saka. It feels like the majority of teams in the Premier League have got a player that you back to get the goals for them. And it's not just okay. The contrast in that game with Newcastle, obviously, with them having Isak is huge. But even if you look throughout the league, there are players, whether it's Semenyo or Cunha or whoever it is, like teams have players, even like Ipswich with Delap. And we don't have that. And you're right, in terms of a ball striker, we don't really have anyone that can strike a ball. Yeah, Saka can when he catches it right. Trossard, to an extent, can. But it is definitely something we're missing. And that's, if we go and get a Sesko, he is the opposite of that. The way he strikes the ball is unbelievable. But it does just feel like that is something we're missing. And Ødegaard, again, that 15-goal season he got a couple of seasons ago, part of it is that I don't feel like he gets into the same positions that he used to then. But the other thing is that so many of his goals that season, you watch them back, he's running onto the ball as it's coming across, and it's first time. Whereas now it feels like the ball comes back, and a lot of the time he wants to take a touch and then another touch. And by that point, he's been closed down and the shot gets blocked. So, yeah, it's a frustrating thing to watch. And obviously in those games where you're not going to get crazy number of chances against the Newcastle, you need the players that are going to bury them.
Yeah, I think what's mad for me as well is that I've looked at both these cup competitions believing that we are a better team than both Newcastle and Manchester United. And when you look at it on the pitch, you wouldn't known that. And I think that's what's frustrated me the most is we had Kai Havertz, who, let's be real, had an absolute mare against Manchester United. He was missing from 1 yards. He was diving for the penalties that we got. And then we obviously got the situation where he missed the penalty. And then against Newcastle, he missed from a yard or two with a header in the first leg, and in the second leg the other night, I mean, he was breakdancing more than he was playing football. The guy was on the floor for majority of the game. And I wanted to start with him because I think when we, as a team right now, don't particularly play well, or we don't score goals, or we don't go through, or don't win a game, everybody looks towards Kai Havertz. Now, as much as I don't think he's the guy for Arsenal in terms of being an actual out and out prolific number 9, I think he can be a contributor to the squad. And that's why I don't really look at Kai Havertz and blame him. I don't really point the fingers at Kai Havertz because I think that he's doing what he has always done. I don't look at him right now and think, crikey, you're not putting 35 goals in. He's never done that. I don't look at him and go, wow, you're not scoring those chances. He never really has. I look at above that and I think, why is he still in the position where we're in February as the number 9, as the only option we've got up top, when there's not really, unless you want to play Martinelli or Trossard through there, another option? Why are we in that? And it is above Mikel Arteta and the players. And I have to start and ask you the question there, Ross, because I look at that scenario in January. I think it's nothing short of shambolic, bruv.
Yeah, no, I think we've left ourselves so short, and that Martinelli injury was the most predictable thing you've ever seen,
Mm-hmm.
which is more frustrating because it's like, how can we all sit here saying the exact same thing, but it not be acted on by the club? And yeah, it's frustrating. And I think Kai Havertz is a very good player. I think he can contribute, like you said. I think he's versatile, and so he will always find game time. But yeah, is he the person that you should be relying on to play 90 minutes up top every game, which is pretty much the point that we're at now? No. And I think that's why Arteta was so desperate to get Ollie Watkins, because Watkins was never on our radar. Like, he wasn't a striker that we wanted to sign, but he became available because Villa offered him to us. And we know that Arteta was happy to go and spend what it needed, what needed to be spent to get him. But obviously people above him said no. So long term, we'll see if that works out. If we do end up going and getting Sesko and he turns into whatever it is that we think he could turn into, then maybe that works out. But in the here and now, I think it's borderline criminal to leave ourselves in a position where we're going into an insane run of fixtures in both the Premier League and the Champions League, and we're relying on Havertz, Trossard, and Ethan Waneri. It's crazy.
It is mad. And, going back to that comment that Gary Neville made, I actually think Ethan Waneri is the best striker of football that we got. I've seen him now putting them top bins, cutting in on that left. And I think that cutting in on that left foot, for me, he reminds me of Saka, Rory. He actually does remind me of him. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be anywhere near that level, and I hope that he's better than Saka. And, some have said, to be fair to him, the kid's doing more than what Saka was doing at 17. So maybe he's got an unbelievable potential to be even better than that, right? But I look at him right now, and is it fair to say in that front line, he's probably one of our most exciting players?
Yeah, comfortably at this point. I think, the way he cuts in on his left foot, it's like it's already become a thing where he cuts in and you're like, well, this is a chance. Before he's even struck you, you're thinking, this is going to cause problems. And so, yeah, it's a massive asset to have. And I feel like the way he hits a ball, it's like almost not surprising, but there's not a lot of backlift. There's not a lot of run up, and he can just ping it. And we don't really have that. Even if you see like Martinelli cut in onto his right, he kind of has to wind it up, and oftentimes it goes nowhere near the goal. So yeah, right now, until Saka is back, our biggest goal threat is a 17-year-old, and that again makes you question what we've been doing when it comes to signing attacking players.
Well, let's stick with that then, man, because we've had, it's gone so quick, man. We've had 5 years, 6 seasons. I don't know how many transfer windows, probably 10 or 11 now. And we still don't seem to have the right squad depth or starting lineup when it comes to our front men. I wanted to kind of ask you a question about what you put that down to, because there's a lot of debate and it's still a question I can't answer, brother, if I'm honest. Like, why is this? Is it the Cronkies don't want to spend in that department? Is it that Mikel Arteta doesn't want a prolific number 9? Is it a mixture of both? Let me ask you that question, because we're in a scenario now where we have Kai Havertz as our only forward. Jesus is injured. Sterling's the only cover for Saka, but Saka is injured. Waneri, as you mentioned quite rightly, has been bought through at 17, which no one really anticipated this early. And then we've got Trossard and Martinelli, and we still can't work out which one starts and which one's the sub. So we are in a bit of a mess when we're looking at it coming forward. No, they're not all like absolute scrubs. We have got players that can put the ball in the back of the net, and they've proven that, right? And the stats don't lie. But I think it's quite clear our department that we have to look at in the summer at trying to lift. And you mentioned Sesko. Everybody wants Isak. Nico Williams is mentioned pretty much every window at the moment as that left-hand side. And there's a lot of right-hand side covers. I think that Mbeumo is being linked for a summer move also. So clearly the club are looking at that if the rumours are to be believed to be true. But why has it taken this long? Why have we got to this point, do you think, where we still don't have that prolific 9, bruv?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we've spent like 100 million-ish on attacking players in Arteta's entire time at the club, which relative to what we spent on midfielders and defenders is nothing. I think when it comes to the striker, it's this kind of Goldilocks situation where it has to be perfect. And we've not seen that in other positions. Like, you go back to when we wanted Lisandro Martinez as our left back, right? And we bid up to 38 million. It reached that point and the deal didn't get done and we walked away. But instead of walking away and just not signing someone to do it, we went and got Zinchenko. Because, okay, someone. Yeah. Whereas with the striker, it does feel like it's just been, we're either going to get the absolute one that we want or we're not going to do anything. And I think that's been the frustration, because there was a level between Eddie Nketiah and Isak, right? There were strikers within the range of those two that would have improved the level of the squad, even if it was only for the short term. So I get why we want, I think when it comes to a prolific striker, Arteta doesn't just want a prolific striker that doesn't offer much else. Because I think he sees that, okay, maybe you get someone that can score 25 goals a season, but if them scoring 25 goals a season means that Saka gets 5 less a season and Martinelli gets 5 less a season and Odegaard gets 5 less a season, it's like you've actually lost out the number of goals that you're scoring. So it needs to be someone that can link up and understand the way that we play. And I think Isak, like, we know Isak is the exact one, right? In terms of
he's the
running
dream
with the ball, in transition, he's excellent. Hold up plays excellent. Ball striking's excellent. Like, he ticks every box. And I think they think that Sesko will be similar because he's got the speed on transition, big physical player that can hold it up, can strike the ball. Not the level that Isak is now, but a lot younger. So they think he's the guy. But I just wonder if we needed to wait this long to get that deal done, right? So, especially because 2 or 3 years ago, I don't even think Sesko would have been on their radar. And so, yeah, I think it's left ourselves in this sort of awkward position. And then I think left wing is the other one where I think if we're honest with ourselves, neither Trossard or Martinelli is going to be the left winger that's going to really carry us through title races and Champions League campaigns. So that's the other one that we need to look at. And what I think is interesting with that is actually what we end up doing in terms of selling Trossard and Martinelli. Because Trossard, we're not going to get much money for. Whereas I feel like Martinelli, because we bought him so cheap, you could probably sell for a decent wedge of money. And if he's not going to be your long-term starting player, I wonder if that's the way that we end up trying to raise money. But yeah, it's a especially for fans, it's just a frustrating position to be left in.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a position where I think taking away the attacking midfielders position, I think Saka and Havertz are the only two that are guaranteed to still be here next season. And Waneri, obviously, but as I mentioned, him and Odegaard, I see more as kind of attacking midfielders. Trossard, I think, could be off to Saudi. It's his last kind of big contract. He's at the age of just under 30, I think, or he's going to be 30 soon. So he's not going to have a long-term future at any club he goes to. Jesus has been out for a long, long time and will remain to be out for a long time. So I imagine we'll probably keep him because no one will be able to buy him. And then we've got the scenario of Martinelli that you quite rightly say. And I do think he likes Martinelli. He would have got rid of Martinelli by now. He was not his signing. So him and Tierney, I think, are the only two that are left that aren't, along with Saliba and Saka, that aren't, they're an Emery signing. So I look at it now and I think that Martinelli could potentially be one in the summer that you look at. I'm not sure how much you'd get for him. I imagine you get quite a good amount of money for him because of his age and potential that he still has. But I do think there's a area now I look at and I think, how many goalkeepers have we had? How many left backs or left-sided players have we had? How many defenders are we now going through? Midfield, you could probably say similarly that we've had quite a few players that we've actually bought, but really we haven't settled down on a trio we're 100% set on yet, I don't believe. And then the front three is just a bit of a mess. So there's still quite a lot of work to do in the summer, in my opinion. And I think that I went into January thinking, right, bring in 2. Don't have to go and bring in 5 now. Just bring in 2, and then you go and get the other 5 you want in the summer. And then you get another 7 players that are upgraded on the 7 that you don't think are good enough in this squad I'm talking about, not just the first 11. But for us to do absolutely nothing now, it still leaves us potentially with 6 or 7 players that we need in the summer because players are going to want to leave or players are going to be upgraded upon. And you look at the players that are leaving potentially in the summer. The goalkeeper, let's just be real, we're going to need another backup because Neto's going to go back to Bournemouth, I imagine, to be sold. So that's one position we're going to need. The left-back situation is weird. You're going to lose potentially Tierney and Zinchenko and Kivior, so you're going to have to look at the left side again. Then you go into midfield. What's happening with Partey and Jorginho? We don't know what's happening with Jesus and Trossard, and we still need a centre-forward on top of that. So really, we're talking there about 6 or 7 players that we might need in the summer, and we're sort of looking at this thinking, When was the last time we bought 6 or 7 players? The other thing I'll say is that you mentioned, which was bang on, was when we were looking at Lissandro Martinez, we ended up with Zinchenko. You could probably say the same when we ended up with looking at Caicedo and Mudryk, and albeit we brought in players of Jorginho and Trossard. With Arteta, what is strange for me is we haven't really ever been heavily linked with a 9 and then gone and got another 9 that we weren't so linked with. So that makes the question mark of, does Mikel Arteta want the perfect 9, or does Mikel Arteta not really want a 9 and he's quite happy to make do with Havertz and Jesus? And that's what I still can't answer, because I'd be really surprised if I was alongside Arteta as right hand man. Let's say I've come in to replace Edu and I've said to him, right, Mikel, we want this striker, and he goes, hang on a minute, no, I don't want Isak, I want Havertz. I'll be absolutely stunned, bruv, if that is the case. Like I just don't believe that is what it is. So then I look at the Cronkies and I'm thinking, is it the Cronkies then that aren't delivering and aren't putting this money up and stumping the cash up? And people say to me, well, they've given him 800 million, but they haven't really, have they? Like, they've allowed that money to be spent on the squad, but that's not their money. This isn't Josh going, yep, let me write a check for you, 800 million, here you go. This has come out of my pocket. It's bollocks. Like, they've spent 200 million, Rory, in 17 years. That is an absolute shambles for billionaires. Like, I can't stand them. I absolutely cannot stand the ownership. I've always been very vocal about that. So yeah, sorry, I'm waffling now, man. What do you make of it?
Nah, it's true. I think the only time that we kind of pivoted was when we wanted Vlahovic, and then he chose Juventus, and we ended up with Gabriel Jesus. But didn't even feel like a pivot, because they're such different players. It wasn't like, oh, can't get Vlahovic, this is like a slightly lesser version of Vlahovic. It's like, no, this is a completely different player. And I do think there's been a lot of that have maybe they've been put on, or people think that they were Arteta signings, but I think there's been quite a few signings that the club have thought are just value signings. So I think the club thought Trossard was a value signing. The club thought Havertz was the reason Real Madrid at the same time as us wanted Havertz was it was seen that 65 million for Havertz was good value, rightly or wrongly. Like, in the football world, that was seen as a good value thing. And it's like, sometimes you got to pivot away from good value. And the only time that we've truly gone above what we valued a player at was Declan Rice. We valued Declan Rice at like 80 mil. And apparently it was Arteta and Edu together put on this massive like show of force to the Cronkies, and we're like, we have to do this. And that's the only time that we've really done it. And so you're like, overspending by 25 million on one player in the space of like 5 years. That's not really kind of backing a manager in a sense. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of money has been spent. But and then going back to what you said in terms of like, there are a lot of players. It was only someone's opinion of the players that we need to get rid of this summer. And it was like 11, 12 players, senior players. You're not going to do that in one window. And that was the frustrating thing for me about the January was, okay, even if you can't go and get the absolute player that you want, you can still do some business which takes weight off what you need to do in the summer. So even if it was selling Kivior or selling Zinchenko, selling a couple of the players that we know we're going to need to sell in the summer, because now you left yourself, okay, so what? We're going to sell 10, 11, 12 players in the summer, and then you'd have to replace, just to have enough bodies, you'd have to bring in like 7 or 8 players in the summer. Obviously, that's not good. You're not going to have, between 11 and 12 going out and 7 or 8 coming in, like 18, 20 transfers of senior players in one window. Like, obviously, it's not going to happen. So, yeah, you end up kind of kicking the can down the road. And so then it's like, okay, so we don't get all the business done in the summer because there's not enough time. So then we'll get the next bit done in January. And that constant kind of kicking the can down the road, I think, is problematic. Whereas you look at what City have done and they're like, okay, and we're not City and we never will spend like City, but they've spent however much in the January, they've got 4 of their signings done, and they're going to do the exact same thing again in the summer. And that's difficult to compete with if effectively you have an entire window go by where you do nothing.
Yeah, man, it winds me up when they start talking about a war chest in the summer again. How many times have we heard this? Like, we've heard this so many times, man. Let me ask you straight, what do you make of the ownership? Because, I've been very vocal. I think if you do watch or listen to my content, you know I'm not a fan of the Cronkies. But I don't know where you're at with it, because obviously I know that you're a big fan of what Mikel Arteta has done at Arsenal, and I know that I believe you still believe he's the guy that we need to keep and he'll take us across the line. But when it comes to the ownership, are you kind of in the same opinion that they're good for the club and that they know what's happening and that they fully back Arteta and etc., or do you think that they're an issue, Rory?
I'm kind of in the middle. I don't, like, they're not great, but they could be worse. Like I look at the Glazers at United, Levy at Tottenham. Like it could be a lot worse. I do think, the protests in and around the Super League and everything that happened with that kind of shook them a little bit and woke them up a little bit. But that said, I do feel like they could just be braver. And I don't even know if that's 1,000,000% down to them. Like I've read things about kind of Tim Lewis being a lawyer and various people that are really senior at the club and not necessarily the sort of people that would take any sort of gamble in terms of spending big money. And I do feel like occasionally you need to, and we maybe don't have that. But yeah, ultimately they could definitely be worse. But if you want to compete with City, and we don't know what's going to happen with City, but long term, if you want to compete with them, are they going to be able to go toe to toe year after year with City? Probably not. So it's tough. And I don't know what the solution would be. Like, I don't know if anyone really has ever been interested in buying the club that would come in and be significantly different to them.
Mm. Yeah, look, I my thoughts. There's no point in me going into it again, but I just look at the success of Arsenal prior to the Cronkies coming in. I look at them since they've taken over. We have a handful of FA Cups, bro. And as much as I love FA Cups and winning trophies, that isn't where we should be when we move to this stadium. I remember Peter Hillwood and David Dean and Arsene Wenger saying back then, we must move because we need to compete at the highest level. And the only way to do that is to move to this stadium. Well, since then, we haven't been competing, not with the very, very best. Now, I know you can say Mikel Arteta has got us back challenging, and that's facts. That's not opinion. That's fact. We have been for the last 3 seasons now. We've been in a title race, whether or not you think we're going to win it this year or not. We're still in that race. But I just think when it matters, and when we get to a stage, the owners show who they are, and it is, well, you've had enough, mate. We ain't going to give you any more. And it's like, but we need more. Like, we need someone. We have got literally a injury-stricken team at the front line that we can hardly put a team out with. And you're not going to allow us to go and do anything in the summer. Now, what an ownership should do, in my opinion, is Mikel Arteta should ring up Josh. And maybe this happens. I don't know. Maybe it does. But he rings up Josh and he says, look, I appreciate how much you've already provided me with backing-wise, but there's serious circumstance changes here. I've got injuries that galore. And if we leave it as it is, I think we're going to struggle to get us across the line this year again. And they should go, okay, well, what do you need, Mikel? Well, I need you to give me this much money because I need that striker, that winger, and that XYZ. Okay, take 200 million. That's what an ownership does to back them up, in my opinion. Now, people will say, yeah, but that's maybe they just don't want to do it. Maybe they think you're giving him enough money already. Don't tell me that when I look over at the NBA and they're being that Jokic in, or whatever his name is, for £750,000 a week. Don't tell me that when I look at the state of the Rams, yeah, in comparison to what the Arsenal stadium is looking like, tired, where I'm standing on my seat right now, my season ticket, and it's fucking staining my clothes because it's so bad to see. Yeah, you can't even see the numbers, let alone the rows at the Emirates right now. So don't tell me this when they're like, oh, you've given him enough money. And then you add the same sentence, say, look at the Rams. You put the pictures of the Rams stadium and the track that gets you to it and the beach and sand and lake that's outside it. And then you put the picture of the Emirates with a couple of murals outside it and some old stained seats. Like, don't tell me that these clubs are the same ownership, man, and they actually have the same level of care. It's a disgrace, bruv. Do you know what I'm saying? So I don't know how people can think I'm being harsh there.
No, it's fair. I do think if you compare us to their sports teams in America, we do feel like the sort of neglected child that they didn't want almost at times. But yeah, it's a tricky one. Like, I do feel like I hope that they want us to just get to a place where we're consistently churning out Champions League and we're consistently competing for titles. And then if they believe, okay, this is the revenue that's going to come in year on year and year, then we'll start investing again. But it felt like the taps almost turned off after the Declan Rice summer. Like that summer, it was like, okay, if you back us like this every year, if we can have one Rice level signing a year, then we can make progress. And the following, we've had 2 Januaries and a summer window since that, and it is like the taps have turned off. And the reason for that, I don't know. And there will become question marks over whether or not they're just happy getting top 4 year on year, like which so many ownerships have done previously with other clubs as well. Because we are set to a place where top 4 or 5, as it is now, should be comfortable for us every year. But it's like that, as it did with Wenger. I mean, it cost Wenger his job ultimately in the end, was that fans become tired of. And when we got back into it for the first time a couple of years ago, from where we'd been, it was like, okay, this is amazing. But you've even seen, you see it with the atmosphere at the Emirates now. Now there's an expectation that, well, yeah, okay, we're a top 4 team, but what now? And so they've got to invest. And you are actually right as well. It seems small, but there are simple things at the stadium, like seats, like the fact that when you're looking for your seat number, you can't see the numbers. You can't, half the numbers on the rows even don't exist anymore. Like simple things like that can't cost much money to solve, but are just like general quality of life issues with the stadium. It feels like, would that, and I've not been to any of the stadiums in America, but would their stadiums in America be left like that? I don't know, but I doubt it.
I doubt it very much, mate, from what I've seen over there. And I've not been over there, but I just see the images and it's enough to tell me they have a lot of TLC over there with their sports. Let me tell you. Look, what frustrates me the most and what worries me, I suppose, the most is that over there, they have won stuff, but they haven't dominated any of the sports. It's not like, oh, wow, Cronkies are in town. It's not like this guy's the equivalent of Roman Abramovich over there with those teams or Sheikh Mansour. This guy literally is a one and done. And I say this guy, I mean, obviously Stan and Josh together. They're basically one and done with the Nuggets, with the Rams, the Rapids. I mean, they haven't done anything with those for ages. Obviously, now they've got Arsenal, the one and done. And I just have a fear that the Cronkies are looking at Arsenal Football Club thinking 30,000 people on the waiting list, all the stadium's full, the club shop is absolutely booming, all of the food and drinks getting bought, and they're thinking, let's refurbish it. Because that's the plans. They're going to upgrade the Emirates. There's suggestions that they're going to expand it by 20,000 seats as well, which is on their priority list before we've even won anything, by the way. And what will happen then, Rory? Well, we can't buy any players. We're upgrading the stadium. We can't have any transfer windows for you. I'll tell you, you've got the squad you want. And I just look at that as a priority, and I think, yeah, this is why I hate this ownership, because that is for them getting more money. They're not like, right, do you know what? We need a brilliant stadium. Let's give them this money. So we've actually got a decent squad that can compete whilst they're playing in this beautiful new stadium. But they're the other way around. And that's, I don't know how much more I can make it clear that I hate these owners, man.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they can expand the stadium. Like, I know that's what they want to do. I remember reading a thing before that the way the Emirates was built was like really not well planned in terms of if you ever needed to expand it. So God knows what they end up doing with that. But the thing is, it's like, look at what Levy's done with Spurs. Like, you can give people the best nice stadium and all the shit that comes with it and all the bells and whistles. But if you're losing week in, week out and you're not winning stuff, like, it's untenable. So yeah, they can do what they want with the stadium, but as fans, you take a Premier League trophy, like you say, your clothes are getting stained by the seats. So you take stained clothes and a Premier League over non-stained clothes and just another top 4. So
Facts, bro.
We'll see.
No, absolute facts. Look, taking it back to the football, we have got 14 games left in the Premier League. We'll come to the Champions League in a minute. We've got the fixtures that I think are probably more favourable than Liverpool's, but you can never tell because it's the Premier League. But if you had to say now, do you want Arsenal's set of fixtures or Liverpool's? I think the majority of Premier League teams will probably take Arsenal's. I think we've had some horrendously tough away games, although we've got some coming up. I think Forest will be tough. I think Old Trafford is, as much as they're a laughable club, is never easy. And obviously we've got to go to Anfield. How do you see this one shaping up? Now, I don't normally like to look too far ahead, bruv, because it is like a one game at a time type thing, right? But if we're looking at it just as a conversation of Liverpool and Arsenal right now, out of those 14 games, I asked this to a couple of people of late, I think we've pretty much got to be looking at winning the majority, if not all of them. And that's going to be tough, incredibly tough, right? I don't think we can drop any more than maybe 3 more games. And I'm talking drop, not lose them, like as in draw or lose. I don't think we can do more than that. That means we've got to literally win 11 or 12 games, Rory. Would you agree that that's what we've got to do to win this league?
Yeah, and even then, it might not be enough. We've left it completely in the hands of Liverpool, which is frustrating. We need to claw back. I mean, realistically, we're going to need to claw back 6 points on them before we go to Anfield to give ourselves the opportunity at Anfield to leapfrog them. And even then, we'd also have to claw back however much the goal difference gap is between us at the moment. For me, it's all about Liverpool's next 5 games. Like the 5 games that they've got coming up in 15 days: Everton away, Wolves, Villa away, City away, Newcastle at home. If they get through those 5 games and drop 3 points or less, like if they only drop 3 points from those, I just don't see where it happens after that, because I think they'll get through it and they'll be like, right, we've done the hard bit now, and that'll be enough. And our games are easier, 100%, but I still look at like Forest away, presumably without Saka and without Martinelli. Then you've got, United and Chelsea, but you've got Champions League games either side of those 2 games. And just the way generally that we've gone this season, we haven't put a run together. In the league, actually, recently, we did put an unbeaten run together, but it still included draws against Villa. And yeah, I don't see us dropping so few points and Liverpool dropping enough that we catch them up, to be honest. Unless they collapse this month. That's the only hope.
I hate to say that I agree with you with that, because it's very kind of defeatist attitude, but I do agree with you. I feel like Liverpool get through the next few games that they've got, and it could be season over as far as Arsenal are concerned for a title. One thing we do have to do, though, is something we haven't done since 2012, which is beat them at Anfield. That's an absolute must for me. The last time I remember it well, Podolski and Cazorla scoring, and I remember thinking, wow, that's the last time we've beaten them at Anfield. That's absolutely crazy. Look, we're in a different position for a lot of those years. We were getting battered for most of them, 4s and 5s. But when I look at it now, it has been closer each time we've gone up there. The last 2 seasons, we know we kind of really would have loved to have beaten them, and nearly did. 1-1 and 2-2 were, of course, the results. One of them being 2-0 up, which is still crazy to this day. I think we have to do that. My only thing, Rory, is no matter what, we have to be no more than 3 points behind them when we get to that game, in my opinion. And the way things are right now, if they beat Everton, which I think they will, because as much as Moyes at Everton and it's different for Liverpool and it's a derby and the last one at Goodison, I get all that. I just think Liverpool are better than them. And I think that they will beat them. And when they do that, it's then 9 points, bruv, with only 14 games left to go. That is an incredible ask. And that means that if we get to a stage of, Liverpool are still going to drop points, well, they need to drop, say, 3 games. That's if Arsenal win them all. Yeah. Liverpool got to lose 3 games and Arsenal got to win them all. That's going to be an ask. If that for me means I think Liverpool might drop 4 games between now and the end of the season. That's not lose 4. That's just drop 4 games. If that is the case, that means Arsenal can only drop 1 more and they've got to beat them at Anfield. That's just an incredible ask, mate. So would you agree that we get to Anfield, we need to be within touching distance there for us to win this league?
Yeah, like we have to, or we at least have to give ourselves the chance to be within touching distance. If we win every game until Anfield and there's still more than 3 points ahead of us, then at that point, I think you have to turn around and say, do you know what? Like, they're going to end up on high 80s, possibly into the 90s points. If they do that, and you look at the season that we've had in terms of key players being missing through injury and various other things, I think you'd probably say, like, it would have been a hell of an effort to hit 90 points with our squad this season. But anything other than that, like, if they end up, if they finish the season low 80s, mid to low 80s, and we're not at least in contention going to Anfield, then, we're going to have dropped points within the next few games that we shouldn't have done. Forest away is the only one, but and even Forest away, you say Forest away, we should win. But the way that they've played this season, particularly at their ground, that's the only one where I'd be like understanding if we came away with like a draw. But other than that, even Chelsea and United, the way that those 2 teams are playing at the moment, we should be beating them.
Yeah, it's mad because I said to judges, I think there's 4 games that we're going to drop. He said, which are the 4? I said, Forest away, Liverpool away, because I think we'll draw that. And, well, I think we'll draw both. And then the other two that I picked was Newcastle, because I just hate that team at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a draw. And the other game was, what was it? It was either United or Chelsea. It was a mad one I picked just because of the
United
up
away
here
or Chelsea at home.
I think it was United away. I think it was Old Trafford a draw or something like that. I come up with just because they're that horrible team that you just know. And it's different when we play United. Everyone says, "Oh, it's great playing United. They're a mess." Yeah, they are. But we've played teams that are a mess this season, and we've come away with a point. Do you know what I mean? We should have beaten
Yeah.
Everton. We should have beaten Fulham. We haven't. You know, we should have beaten Bournemouth. We should have beaten Newcastle. Like these teams that we've dropped points to, Brighton home and away, we haven't beaten them. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like this is the problem. And look, it's really tough to play anybody in the Premier League. I'm not saying you walked through it. It's a breeze in the park at anyone, even if it's Southampton, right? I look at it and I think, yeah, if you want to go win this league, you look at the teams ahead and you think, God, do you know what? On paper, Arsenal are better than all of them, other than Liverpool, right? But it don't
Yeah.
work like that, does it? It don't work like that, unfortunately. And that's where I'm kind of at. Let's move quickly to the Champions League because that's an interesting competition. And at the moment, I don't look at our front line and I'm feeling like anyone's fearing us. But bear with me at this one. I think we get through the next round because if we don't, I think it's a disgrace. But if we should get through the next round, AC Milan and Juventus are elite when it comes to Europe, but they're not playing like it. Yeah, PSV or Feyenoord, if I'm honest with you, are probably playing better than the other two, right? So I look at that right now and think we should be getting through that. If we do, it's going to get really tough, bruv. And I'd expect it to from that stage onwards. You're not going to get a nice, easy draw once you get into the quarters or semis of the Champions League. It's looking like we're going to probably be getting one of the Madrids, Atletico or Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. That's going to be tough, right? That's going to be tough. Then if we do get through that game, which will be unbelievable if we do, we're then looking towards the Barcelonas and the Liverpools of this world. So we have to be at our absolute best, in my opinion, and we are going to need the players back. But can we win this competition? And the reason I ask that is because I've seen, and so have you, some horrendous teams win the Champions League, bro. And I'm talking horrendous 11s. Chelsea's in 2012, Liverpool's, to be fair, in 2005. Porto under Jose Mourinho, they were not the best team in the world when they won that competition. We're certainly not the best team in the world, let me tell you that, Rory, right? So what are your thoughts about this Champions League, bro?
Yeah, look, it is one of them where round of 16 we should go through whichever of the four teams it's against, and then you get into the last eight. It is probably going to be Madrid, Bayern, or either Madrid or either of the Madrids or Bayern. Difficult game, semi-final difficult game, but we should have Saka back at least for the quarterfinals because that'll be after the international break and into April. And we have been good in Europe this season. Like there's no doubt about it. We lost one game to Inter, which realistically was a very even game. A draw would have been fair, and that nonsense handball cost us. And so there's not really any team in Europe right now that I think would blow us away. It'll all come back down to the exact same things that we've spoken about before in terms of will we have someone that puts the ball in the back of the net with the chances that we create? And who knows if that will happen or not. But yeah, like you said, I mean, like Chelsea won it in 2021 with Havertz, Mount, and Timo Werner as their front three. Like,
great point.
Like it's doable. It is doable. So yeah, I honestly think if anything, the Champions League is a better opportunity for us than the Premier League this season because it's completely in our own hands. We're not relying on anyone doing anything. We have, however many games it is, 7 games to win it, and it's that simple. So yeah, it's exciting, I think. And the one, if there ever was a potential silver lining of if we have dropped points and Liverpool are definitely going to win the Prem, then maybe at least we can fully focus on that. Although I don't think that'll make much difference if you come up against a Bayern and don't finish your dinner. But yeah, I don't know. It's with Saka back, I feel like we can do something.
Yeah, and that's my next question. We've got Saka, we've got Ben White, we've got Martinelli, and Tomiyasu, if you even count him, as our injured players right now. What's your thoughts on these guys coming back? There's a lot of reports suggesting Ben White will be fit. Saka is the next one on that list who will probably be towards that March sort of month. Martinelli, I think, is out for a few weeks from what we're hearing with a hamstring injury. And then you've got Tomiyasu, who I don't know if I'm going to put him on a milk carton soon, I think, because I don't know where this guy is. So talk to me about those four, man, and when you think they might return and when you think they should return, because the Saka one is a massive question mark about, are we rushing him back?
Yeah, I think it seems like Ben White is almost good to go. There's no point rushing him back into it. I think we've just had a little break. Then we play Leicester. Then we got another week off before West Ham. But you can certainly like phase him back in over those two games. And to be fair, yeah, people question whether or if he could possibly start ahead of Timber, which is obviously a question in itself. But having the ability to play him against a Leicester or a West Ham so that Timber can actually get some sort of freshness back is going to be a massive advantage anyway. So that's big for us. It also means that we've got cover at right centre back if we need it for Saliba to have a rest. But the Saka one's the big one because I saw that thing, I think it was in the Sun, about Saka maybe being back potentially by the United game or even the first leg of the round of 16. That to me feels like almost an unnecessary risk. Like I feel like Waneri can play those games, and there's not an insane schedule of games back to back to back. So for me, you like just don't rush him back. We did the surgery. He specifically had the surgery to give him the best chance of recovering fully as possible and it not being something that affects the rest of his career. Don't then rush him back because that negates the whole purpose of giving him the surgery in the first place. Whereas, yeah, if you can see it out, if we can win the round of 16 without him, and then he can also have that international break to recover as well, and you give him an extra, effectively at that point, you give him an extra 3 weeks, then that makes a massive difference. So, yeah, for me, definitely don't rush Saka back. It's not worth the risk. Who else? Martinelli, I think he'll be back. That's a big one just because running on Waneri, Trossard and Havertz for that entire period is going to be tough, and I don't trust Sterling. And then, yeah, Tomiyasu, I don't know if he still exists, to be honest.
Yeah,
Genuinely.
brother. Tomiyasu.
That's one. It's honestly one of the most baffling things I've ever seen in terms of, like, he came off 5 minutes against Southampton, didn't go down with an injury, and yet he's been out longer than Ben White. Honestly, I've never seen anything like it. And there's been no real like transparency either around what the injury is or anything. So yeah,
I wonder if
genuinely
there is. Well, I wonder if there's something off the pitch, mate, that we don't know about with Tomiyasu. Like nobody gets a hamstring injury and he's out for a season. Like I don't know anybody. And what's frustrating is I actually rate him. I actually like him as a player. I think he's a good one-on-one defender. I think he's got aerial ability. I think he's quite good on the ball. He's versatile. So it's hell of frustrating. What is frustrating is when the fans say to me, "Get rid of Tierney because he's washed and he's an injury-prone player." He's played like nearly 3 times as many games as Tomiyasu. It's just absolutely crazy, man. It really is. But look, I think Tomiyasu's one I just forget about. Ben White, to be fair to him, very durable, hardly ever injured. First big injury he's got at Arsenal in 4 years, whatever it is. Big player, love him. Great to have around. You're right about him playing in a couple of positions as well. And my biggest area of concern at the moment in terms of players to next go down is Saliba and Timber. Because the amount of games they're playing, these two, coming off the back of an ACL, Saliba had an injury and, only a couple of weeks ago is now playing again. And these players just don't look right. They look knackered, bro. They're playing way too many games and they're all going down. And that's my next area of concern. The frustrating part of that is Ben White will probably come in and Timber will probably go out, and this is what happens at the moment.
That's how it's been, isn't it? The other one for me is Gabriel, because at least I feel like with Saliba, once we've got Ben White, I think Arteta trusts Ben White at right centre back. Still don't feel like there's anyone he trusts really to play at left centre back. Gabriel, since the start of he had a knock at the end of December, and then he came back into the team and has played literally every single minute since the start of January. So, like, I think so far since the start of January, we played I think he played 1,020 minutes in the space of 34 days, which is just asking for trouble from someone that potentially was rushed back from an injury at the end of December anyway, because we needed him. And Havertz is another one. Havertz is incredibly durable, like the running that he does, the consistency. But he's another one. And in fact, if anything, if there's one player that you could talk about his finishing ability, whatever, like if Havertz goes down injured in the next couple of games, then what do you like? We're looking at Calafiori up top at that point. It's insane.
Mate, unbelievable. It's a crazy amount of injuries this season for a lot of teams. I mean, it's not just Arsenal. We look at Spurs, what that's happening there. Big Andrew's coming out, bless him, and blaming that, not himself. Interesting. Brighton, they've had a hell of a lot of injuries. At Bournemouth, I mean, there was a clip the other day live. They've got all 8 or 9 of them all sitting up there in the box, just watching their
Yeah,
team, which is
no, it's
incredible.
madness.
What Iriola's doing, by the way, unbelievable to have that many players out.
Yeah, that's where it's like, okay, Postecoglou, like, gives his list of players that he's missing, but Iraola's got an equal number of players missing, and they're still in the FA Cup, cruising in the Premier League. Like, yeah, the job he's done is unbelievable.
The job Andrew's done is not so unbelievable. Let me tell you that. Not a fan. I mean, it's hilarious that he's still there, and I hope he stays there. But it's actually quite embarrassing listening to him now in press conferences. I mean, he's probably the most rudest man you can listen to now as well. Like the way he just looks down, doesn't show anybody any respect. Poor me, look at me. I can't do anything with this team. Like, well, mate, you've had 400 million euros to spend on it. Like, what? Don't blame anybody.
Yeah.
But it's just it is embarrassing, man. It is embarrassing. But that's another story. Talking of managers. We've got to close on this. You made a good point before we went live about the fact that there are a number of clubs that can still win silverware this season. Arsenal are one of them. Let me get that in first. But we've spoken quite realistically about the fact that it's going to be very, very difficult to win either the Champions League or the Premier League with the front line that we've got and the squad that we've got that's fit. But there are clubs that probably are a better position for us to win. Manchester City are one of the teams left in the FA Cup. You've got Maresca and the Conference League. Whether you believe that's a good trophy or not, I happen to think it's a pathetic one. But it is one that they're going to potentially walk with their eyes closed and win. Liverpool with Slot looks like he's going to win a trophy. If I'm honest, in the cup final and of course the league. And then Manchester United and Spurs, albeit are a hilarious club, they're 2 of the favourites apparently to win the Europa League, which is quite scary. If they're the favourites, that must be a horrendous competition if them 2 are favourites to win it. My point is, Roz, that we could be in a position where quite a lot of managers could take up some silverware, and Mikel Arteta might yet again be one that isn't. Look, you and I speak very differently on it with the manager. I know that you believe he is still the guy. I still have my concerns, and the way to shut me up is to shove that in my face and say, "Here we go, I've done it." So my question to you is quite simple. If he does, do you think he can do it this season? Is my first question. If he doesn't, convince me why he should be the guy that gets another chance. That's what I would say to you.
Look, I still think the Champions League we could do something, but no, you're right. It would be incredibly frustrating to watch. I think particularly City. And it was why I was wound up at the way we went out of the cup to United in the FA Cup. Was they're the sort of cups that they can just open themselves up to quite an easy run. And you're looking at City now, and it's like Liverpool are out, Arsenal are out, Spurs are out, Chelsea are out. Suddenly that's opened itself up, and City could end up having a really, really poor season by their standards, and still walk out of it with Champions League qualification and FA Cup. And that on paper could end up being better than our season. And that's the frustration of early cup exits. Like we did in the FA Cup. In terms of, if we won an FA Cup or a Carabao Cup, but we didn't fight for the title and we got knocked out, relatively early in the Champions League, like if City go out in the playoff to Madrid, would we look at that as a better season? I don't know. Personally, I don't think I would. Like, I'd rather be fighting for the Champions League and the Premier League. But yeah, there will come a point where people will, understandably turn around and say you have to win trophies. This season, I do think there is the context of the injuries and whatever that have come along with it, and I do still think he's the right man for the job. And I feel like if you perform at the level that we've performed at consistently enough, like the trophies have to come logically, but the longer that the trophies don't come, understandably, people are going to lose patience and faith that he's the one to get us over the line in the later stages of those. So, yeah, for me, I still think that we're on track and we're on the right track, but I can understand people that don't.
See, that's why I respect you as the latter. Is you don't think that we're a disgrace for questioning the manager. Because it's understandable why we are. When there's 5 years down, there's no trophies to show for it. We spent a lot of money. I think we should be spending a lot more, in my opinion, but we have spent a lot of money. And I do think that as much as I don't think perhaps this squad is quite good enough yet to win a major, it's definitely good enough to win a trophy. And for us not to do that I think is really bad. So I look at the cup record, Rory, and I just don't know how we can defend Mikel Arteta. I think it's abysmal, if I'm honest. I think it's absolutely abysmal. The teams we've gone out to in Europe as well, by the way. There's only Bayern Munich I can sit there and go, do you know what? Good side. When we're losing to Villarreal and we can't beat Olympiacos and we're getting bombed out to Sporting Lisbon in the Europa League, I can't have that. On top of that, when we're losing to Forest, albeit nowhere near the side that they were there when they were down in the Championship when we lost to them. Southampton, who were a relegated side that season, we lost to them in the following season, I think in the FA Cup. We've lost to teams like Brighton in the League Cups. We've lost to teams like West Ham in the League Cup, Newcastle this season, Manchester United, a poor Manchester United. I look at that and I think, okay, I can't stick up for this then because we're not losing to Manchester City and Real Madrid here. Because when you do that, trust me, you'll get a very, very different match review from me. I'll sit there and go, do you know what? Man City, it was Real Madrid. But when you're losing to those sides, I question what we're doing and why we're doing that. Like when it matters, is it a mentality thing with Mikel Arteta? Is it a players are just too young and can't hack it yet? Why can't we get across the line against those sides? And that's what I can't get through to it. And I think, do you know what? I myself would be like, yeah, you've been a bit harsh, man. Yeah, we haven't won the Champions League and the Premier League, but look at the FA Cup this guy keeps winning. Look at the League Cups that we've been able to put through. When I don't even have that either, Rory, I'm like, what are we doing then? Like, when are we going to
Yeah.
win? When is it? When is that going to get across? And that's where I'm at. I suppose a little bit different to you is I suppose I'm not saying you've got more patience than me, but I'm just maybe you have to be honest because I haven't got many
Yeah.
much left, right? But I look at it now and I think it's been 21 years without a Premier League. If it's another year, that's 22. Then we're going to get to a stage of talking League Cups and Europa League and European trophies, which are over 30 years now. And it's been 5 since the FA Cup. And I was never, ever waiting more than 6, 7 years to win something. And then when it was 6, 7 years, it was like horrendous. Then it went to 9 under Wenger and we all wanted him out. Now it's been 5, maybe 6 already under Mikel Arteta. When's it going to get to those stages again? And trust me, when I say this, I do not want it to get to that stage again. It was horrible. I hated going toxic, everyone outside doing banners, waving banners, albeit some of us were a part of that because we believe we wanted change. And I think he's absolutely right. You should have a voice to do that if that's what you truly believe in standing. But it weren't pretty to go. It weren't nice, mate. And I don't want it to get to
No.
that stage again, bruv.
Well, that's the thing, and I do feel like it's better now than it was then because at least we are winning the majority of our game. Like very rarely these days do you walk away from the Emirates after a bad result. When you do, it's really annoying because it's normally a result that costs us big time. But I always look back to the FA Cup that we won with him in the first 6 months with a fairly average or a very average team. I'm like, so he does know how to win a cup if that's what he's focusing on. Because that season, there was nothing else to focus on other than the FA Cup. So I'm like, unless he fluked it, he does know how to get a job done. And the route to that FA Cup was pretty difficult as well. Then over a couple of seasons, I look back to like the Olympiacos, Forest, and it was like players let him down. For me, in some of those games, certain senior players at the time, and also the players that he had to rotate in if he ever made changes let him down. Like when we rotated for games against Forest, like the second string team was fucking awful. And then more recently, I'm like, he's not focusing enough on the cups. And so he's clearly everything is on the Premier League to Champions League. And that's fine. But then you've got to win those two, or you need to go back to focusing a little bit on winning a cup as well. Because I don't think you can just keep plodding along. Okay, well, we're fighting for the big two and we don't care about the other two. It's like, there comes a point where that's not enough. So, there was a period of 2 or 3 years. And like, my kind of understanding of people that don't think he's the right man for the job has increased this season. Like, I mean, when we had the first title race with City and people immediately after that were like, he's not the guy, I thought that was mental. I had no patience for someone that had that opinion then. Last season, again, at the end of last season, I thought, surely you can see like what we're doing here and that we're onto something. And then this season is the first season that we've regressed. And I always said, until we regress, I won't think anything other than Arteta is the right person. This season we have regressed a little bit, and sure, there's context and reasons, but ultimately we have regressed. And so then I'm like, okay, like, I can understand why people are beginning to run out of patience. And as that group of people gets bigger, you've got to listen to them. So yeah, I think everyone's got a point, right? Everyone is on the scale. Everyone's got a point where it's the tipping point for them, and my tipping point hasn't been reached yet. But I can understand why it has for some people.
No, listen, that's a real fair, honest opinion. To be fair, and I must say, like, that's why I like listening to fans like yourself and Tom and Harry, who are complete opposite spectrum to me at times. Igal's another one. Because you start to understand their points of view. And then what I find myself doing is I'm like, why are you not hurting? Why are you not ranting? Why are you not painful? But you are, but you just do it in a different way. So
Yeah,
like perhaps I do or Turkish or Curtis or some of the other guys do, right? So I think that's where it's at. And that's why I never fall out with people over stuff. I always have difference of opinions to some people, but I'll never ever fall out with people on that. What I'll
yeah.
say lastly before we wrap up is, do you see a future without Mikel Arteta at Arsenal that could be a successful one? Now, the reason I ask that is because I listen to so many people that are like, if he goes, this is the end of it, don't you? Like, this is the end. And it winds me up, Rory, because I'm like, I understand that people wanted Arsene Wenger out. But when he went, I never thought, this is just, the club's going to go. There's going to be no club. Like, there is going to be a day, whether it's in 10 years, 10 months, or, longer, that Mikel Arteta might not be at Arsenal. And surely it is not all doom and gloom when he leaves. Like, there must be a place that you can understand that we are Arsenal FC, not Arteta FC. Do you understand what I mean by that question?
Yeah, no, 1,000,000%. I think like the idea that we would just 100% fall off without Arteta would imply that there's not a single manager on the planet that is capable of replicating what Arteta's done, which I don't think is true at all. I think a lot of people had the opinion of Jurgen Klopp. Well, Liverpool are going to have to fall off without Jurgen Klopp, and then Arne Slot comes in and improves them. So, no, I definitely don't think that that's the end of the road if we were to lose Arteta. For me, it's more that at this point, on the balance of like probability, I think if you lost him now, the chances of us improving or getting worse, I think it's more likely we'd get worse, just because I wonder how many of the players are invested in Arteta as much as they're invested in the club. How would that change? And I also just look at the manager market and I think, there are some decent managers out there, but there are also some that you could end up bringing in and wouldn't hack the Premier League or whatever. So it's a gamble for me that right now isn't worth taking. In a year's time, if we've regressed again, you'd say, you could definitely say, well, that now I think that gamble is worth taking. But yeah, no, the idea that it's Arteta or bust, I think, is not true.
Okay. No, that's interesting, man. Listen, it's always a pleasure speaking to you, man. There's one super chat I've got to do before we do come to a proper close, mate, which is from AFC 1404. He says he won't sign anyone with a big profile. He wants to be the head teacher. See the situation with Aubameyang. Is way or no way. Aubameyang still banging goals in. He is, but I don't know that he would be for us. Let me just tell you that. However, I do agree. I think that there's definitely an element of that. We need a striker. It's so bloody clear and so obvious. It's quite scary. But that's that. Listen, Rory, I know you got to shoot off, mate. Big up to everybody that's been here. Really appreciate it. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you're doing exactly the same for Rory as well. What you got coming up, bro?
Yeah, just standard. We'll be back to the Arsenal grind once we're back. So TikTok and I stream on watch alongs on Big Up, which we'll try and be slightly less controversial with moving forwards. And yeah, other than that, it's just standard.
Love that, man. Love that. Make sure you are doing the thing and liking and subscribing. We're going to send you over to Troops, who at the moment is I don't know what he's doing. He's doing, I think it's what is that show that he does? I can't remember what he does now. Back Again. That's the one. I know I'd get there in the end. We'll send you over there, people. So make sure you go show him some love. Make sure you're following Rory. Make sure you hit a like and subscribe. I'll be back tonight, 8 p.m. for a Race for Europe show. So please make sure that you're here for that one. Should be fun. What's nice is Arsenal didn't play, so we don't get cooked. That's what's quite nice. We don't get cooked, so you can go cook Chelsea and Liverpool. Can't believe Liverpool went out yesterday. It's absolutely unbelievable. So that's definitely something that will be fun tonight. So let me put the redirect in for Troops. We'll send you over there. Go show him some love. Dan Potts raid, 12th man raid. Yeah, people, we'll see you next time. Take care. We're out of here. Laters.